What you are about to hear is a fictional account inspired by real events. All names, locations, and identifying details have been changed. The emotional truth of what happened has not. He knew what was in the ground beneath their feet. Emmett Gordy told people his daughter-in-law had left on her own. He told that story for 12 years. The problem wasn't that it changed. The problem was that it never did. Not once, not even slightly. Not a new detail in a decade, not a moment of uncertainty. Not the natural drift that comes when a person tries to remember something they actually lived through. 12 years, the same words, the same tone, the same face of a man who had lost someone he never wanted to find. Felicity Sinclair was 24 years old when she disappeared from Hatcher's Creek, West Virginia, on a Tuesday morning in October of 2001. She was in the middle of a divorce. She was living temporarily in the home of her husband's parents. She had 3 children under the age of 5. She liked animals, country music. She kept a notebook where she wrote down things she wanted to do once the divorce was final, places she'd take the kids, a garden she wanted to plant. The notebook had 12 pages filled in. The 13th page was blank. The morning she disappeared, her boots were left on the front porch, laces tied, toes facing the door, as if she had stepped inside and was planning to come back for them. She never came back for them. Her father-in-law told the sheriff's department she had run off to Colorado with a man she'd met online. He told them the same thing he told everyone in Hatcher's Creek, and for 12 years, they believed him. The children grew up. They went to school. They spent every October on the Sinclair tract with the grandfather, walking the same ground, looking for deer tracks. He watched them the whole time. He knew the whole time. Hatcher's Creek sits in the Caldwell County Hills, about 3 hours from Charleston, in the part of West Virginia that doesn't appear in postcards. It's the kind of place where people know each other's vehicles before they know each other's middle names, where the fall hunting season is a calendar event, where a man with land and a steady reputation is a man who doesn't need to explain himself. Emmett Gordy had both. He was 63 in 2001. He had worked the same equipment repair shop for 30 years, the kind of place where people brought their tractors and left without paying right away because they knew he'd be there. He coached youth baseball for a decade. People called him a character, the kind of word that covers a lot of ground when you're liked. His son, Trace Sinclair, was 27. He'd married Felicity 4 years earlier, and by the fall of 2001, the marriage had been failing for 2 of them. They had separated. Felicity had moved back into the Gordy house with the kids, a temporary arrangement while the paperwork moved through the county courthouse. It was not unusual in Hatcher's Creek for a woman in the middle of a divorce to be quietly managed by the family she was leaving. This is not an indictment of the place. It is an observation about the particular shape of its silences. Felicity had been living in that house for 6 weeks when she disappeared. In the initial police report, filed October 9, 2001, 8 days after Felicity was last seen, there is a note in the margin, a detail the responding officer wrote down and then apparently never came back to. It concerns Emmett Gordy's whereabouts on the morning of October 1st. What he said he was doing, and what the record shows he was actually doing. That note sat in a filing cabinet for 12 years. October 1st, 2001 was a Tuesday. The temperature had dropped overnight, low 40s by morning. Felicity's youngest had been sick the week before, a chest cold that was finally clearing. She had a phone call scheduled that morning with her divorce attorney. She had made coffee. The pot was still on when the neighbor came by that afternoon. Emmett Gordy told police, and the story never varied, that Felicity had asked him for a ride to the county employment center. He said he dropped her off at the corner of Birch and Caldwell at around 8 in the morning. He said she had a bag with her. He said she seemed fine. The county employment center did not open until 9. Emmett Gordy's truck was seen by 2 neighbors at the Gordy property at 8:15. He had not taken the day off work, but he did not go to work that day. He called in sick. None of this was in the first report. Some of it appeared in the second. None of it was investigated.
She called me the Sunday before. She was nervous isn't the right word. Careful. She was being careful. I keep coming back to that word. She said, "Tell me if you don't hear from me by Wednesday." I didn't know what she was telling me. I thought she just meant the custody paperwork. I don't know what I thought. She had 3 kids under 5. She wasn't going anywhere.
By Wednesday, Temperance had not heard from Felicity. She called the Gordy house. Emmett answered. He told her Felicity had left, gone to Colorado with someone she'd met on the internet. Said she'd just up and gone, didn't even say goodbye to the kids. Temperance called the sheriff's department that same afternoon. They told her women in the middle of divorces left all the time. They would file a report. They filed a report. They did not open an investigation. A rumor in a small town is not just a story, it is infrastructure. It fills the space where questions would otherwise live, and once it is load-bearing, it is very hard to remove without something else collapsing. The Colorado story spread through Hatcher's Creek the way all such stories spread, through the feed store, through the school pickup line, through the pews on Sunday. Felicity Sinclair had run off. Poor kids, people said. Not really a surprise, given the divorce. You heard she was on the internet a lot. Emmett Gordy never appeared to enjoy telling the story. That is the detail several people remember. He seemed sad about it, shook his head when it came up, said he didn't know what had gotten into her, said it was a tragedy for those children. Said it every single time. The performance of grief is often the last thing anyone examines. We are too busy responding to it to look at it. The Sinclair tract had been in the family for 40 years. 120 acres of mixed timber with 2 deer stands, a creek hollow, and the flat clearing near the south end that the kids called the meadow. They went every October. Emmett took them. He was a present grandfather in the way that mattered to people who were watching. Trace Sinclair spent the first year after Felicity disappeared telling himself the Colorado story was possible. Not because he believed it, because the alternative was something he didn't have a place to put. He'd lived most of his adult life inside his father's version of events. Emmett was the fixed point, the man who knew things, who had opinions about how situations should be handled, who moved through the world with the particular confidence of a person who has never been seriously challenged. When Emmett said Felicity had left, Trace told himself he believed it. When Emmett said the kids would be fine, Trace told himself that too. What Trace actually felt was a specific, durable shame. Not about Felicity, about himself. He had not been a good husband. He knew it. And the easier the story his father offered, the easier it was to conclude that the divorce and the disappearance were connected, that Felicity leaving was something he had, in some way, caused. He would not examine that feeling for 11 years.
My dad he was always the one who knew. When something went wrong, he'd tell you what it meant. I was afraid to find out he was wrong about this one. Because if he was wrong about this one...
There was one person in Hatcher's Creek who never accepted the Colorado story. One person who maintained, through a decade of being ignored, dismissed, and quietly avoided at family gatherings, that Felicity Sinclair had not run anywhere. Temperance Markey kept a file. She started it in November of 2001, 6 weeks after Felicity disappeared. A manila folder, then 2, then a cardboard box. Every call she made to the sheriff's department, every response she received, every piece of paper that had Felicity's name on it. By 2004, the box held 3 years of nothing, and Temperance drove to the department herself. She sat across from a sergeant named Bowden. She had her file. She laid it on the desk between them. The calls, the dates, the attorney's note she'd heard about from Felicity's lawyer, the timeline she'd built herself across 3 years of evenings at the kitchen table. She told him that Emmett Gordy's truck had been seen on the access road to the Sinclair tract on the afternoon of October 1st, 2001. She asked him to get a warrant. Sergeant Bowden looked at the file. He looked at Temperance. He said, "Ma'am, your sister left. I understand that's hard to accept." He did not touch the file. He slid it back across the desk. He thanked her for coming in.
I drove 2 hours to put that file on his desk. I had everything, 3 years of everything. He slid it back to me, didn't open it, just slid it back, like it was something I'd accidentally left there. After that, I kept calling. I don't know why I kept calling. I knew what they thought of me. She wouldn't leave those boots.
She contacted the department 27 times between 2001 and 2008. She wrote a letter to the county prosecutor in 2005. She drove to the state police barracks in Clarksburg twice. Every time, the answer was the same, sometimes polite, sometimes not. Felicity Sinclair had left voluntarily. The file was not being actively pursued. What the Caldwell County Sheriff's Department never told Temperance Markey, which she would not learn for another 8 years, was that they had never verified a single detail of Emmett Gordy's account. Not the employment center, not the bank records, not the truck on the access road. The story had been accepted so completely that the investigation had ended before it began. The rumor had done what Emmett needed it to do, and the department had let it. That is something else in the 2001 file, something that does not appear in the initial report, but surfaces in a supplemental note filed 3 weeks later by a different officer, a deputy named Hollis, who has since retired. The note concerns a phone call Felicity's attorney made to the department in mid-October. The attorney had heard the Colorado story. She told the deputy that Felicity had a meeting scheduled with her on October 4th, 3 days after she disappeared. That Felicity had confirmed it the Friday before. That she had, in the attorney's words, no reason on earth to run. The note was filed. It was not acted upon. Deputy Hollis was not asked to follow up on it. The note is 219 words long. It has been in the public file for over 2 decades. And then there is what a neighbor saw on the afternoon of October 1st, 2001. Her name was Noeline Garrett. She lived on the county road that runs along the base of the Sinclair property. She was coming back from the feed supply around 2 in the afternoon when she saw Emmett Gordy's truck, a dark green Dodge. She knew it well, turning onto the access road that led up to the tract. Not the main road, the access road, the one that goes through the gate and up through the timber to the meadow at the south end. It was an October Tuesday. The deer season didn't open for another 3 weeks. Noeline thought nothing of it. Emmett went up to the property all the time, for all kinds of reasons. She mentioned it to her husband that evening and then forgot about it for 12 years. She mentioned it to Detective Farrell in 2012. He wrote it down. For 11 years, Temperance Markey had been putting her evidence into rooms that weren't built to hold it. The sheriff's department, the prosecutor's office, the state police. Official rooms with official procedures and a filing system that worked exactly as designed, which is to say, it worked to close things. But by 2011, there was a different kind of room, one that had no sergeant named Bowden, no desk to slide a file back across, one that didn't close at 5 o'clock, and didn't return form letters, and didn't have a procedure for making a sister go away. In the spring of 2012, Temperance Markey posted everything she had. The forum was a cold case community. Amateur investigators, retired law enforcement, journalists, families like Temperance's who were holding a case nobody else would carry. She'd been reading it for 2 years before she posted, learning the language, watching how the threads worked, figuring out what kind of case got traction. She posted everything, the timeline, the boots, the Colorado story, the 2001 file as she understood it, the 27 calls, the attorney's note, Noeline Garrett's truck sighting, Emmett Gordy's name. She was 51 years old. She had been making noise for 11 years and nobody had moved. She posted it anyway. Within 3 weeks, the thread had been viewed 40,000 times. 14 months later, Emmett Gordy was in custody. Seward Farrell had a habit. When a case came in, he kept the original report on his desk, not a copy, the original, until it closed. He said it kept him honest about what the first person on scene had actually seen versus what they should have seen. He said the gap between those two things was, in his experience, where the cases lived. He had been with the Caldwell County Major Crimes Unit for 6 years when the Sinclair file landed on his desk in August of 2012. He had been assigned to it because his supervisor had seen the forum thread, because the state police had received 3 calls about it, because Temperance Markey had finally found a room that couldn't close. Farrell read the 2001 file in a single afternoon. He later said the first thing that struck him was how thin it was. For a missing woman with 3 small children and a pending divorce, it was extraordinarily thin. The second thing that struck him was the note in the margin, the one the responding officer had written in 2001 and then, apparently, never returned to. He read the note. He looked at the employment center hours. He looked at the neighbor report about the truck at 8:15. He looked at the supplemental note from Deputy Hollis. He looked at Nolene Garrett's statement about the access road. He requested Felicity's bank records from 2001. Not a single transaction after September 30th. He drove to Hatcher's Creek in September of 2012. He knocked on Emmett Gordy's door. He sat in the kitchen and asked Emmett to walk him through October 1st, 2001, from the beginning. The story came out exactly as it always had. Same words, same sequence, same expression on the face of a man who had been saying it for 12 years.
He was good. I'll give him that. Most people, they've been sitting on a lie that long. There's drift, little inconsistencies, new details that crept in. The story breathes. His didn't drift. Not a syllable. That's actually when I knew. A memory doesn't stay that clean unless someone's been maintaining it.
Through the winter of 2012 and into early 2013, Farrell built his case quietly. He did not tip Emmett Gordy that the inquiry had moved beyond a routine follow-up. He located the retired Deputy Hollis, who confirmed he had filed the supplemental note and had never been asked to pursue it. He found Felicity's attorney, still practicing in the county, who gave a statement consistent with every word of that 219-word note. He requested soil analysis on the southern portion of the Sinclair tract, the area near the creek below the meadow. He did this quietly. He told no one in Hatcher's Creek, and he waited. In late March of 2013, Farrell's team went to bring Emmett Gordy in for formal questioning. Emmett was at the property line when they arrived. When a trooper approached to detain him, Emmett struck the trooper in the face. He was arrested for assault. That same evening, from the county holding facility, Emmett Gordy made a phone call to his son. The call lasted 11 minutes. It was recorded, as all calls from the facility were recorded. Trace Sinclair did not know it was being recorded. Emmett Gordy likely did not care. In the recording, Emmett's voice is calm, measured. He does not sound like a man who has just struck a state trooper. He sounds like a man who is explaining something that has needed explaining for a long time. He told Trace that Felicity had not gone to Colorado. He told Trace that the morning of October 1st, 2001, an argument had gotten out of hand. He did not use the word killed. He did not use the word murder. He said things had gone further than he intended. He said he had handled it. He said he had buried her on the tract. Trace Sinclair did not speak for 43 seconds. The recording captures it. 43 seconds of a man trying to locate himself in a version of the world that has just become unrecognizable.
Farrell called me. It was late. 11, maybe? He said they had a confession. I sat down on the kitchen floor. I don't know why the floor. 12 years. I kept thinking, 12 years I've been saying her name to people who didn't want to hear it. And now...
Go back to the cold open. The clearing on the Sinclair tract. 3 children running through the meadow, an old man watching them, smiling. He knew what was in the ground beneath their feet, the boots on the porch, toes facing the door, as if she had just stepped inside. She had never stepped inside. She had never made it past the yard. The coffee on the hot plate, the unopened appointment on October 4th, the notebook with 12 pages filled and the 13th blank, the bank account that stopped moving on September 30th. Emmett's truck at the property at 8:15 on the access road that afternoon. The note in the margin that nobody followed up on. He had buried her on the land his grandchildren played on. He had taken them out there every fall. He had watched them run through the meadow. The plea negotiation took 6 weeks. Prosecutors offered Emmett Gordy a term of 7 to 14 years in exchange for the precise location of Felicity's remains. The reasoning was clinical. The physical evidence was strong, but the body, and the body alone, would make the case certain and would give the family what 12 years had taken from them. On the afternoon of May 9th, 2013, Emmett Gordy told investigators where to look. The south end of the Sinclair tract, the flat ground below the meadow, 30 meters from the creek. The following morning, a forensic team began work at 7 a.m. At 11:47 a.m. on May 10th, 2013, skeletal remains were located at a depth of 4 feet. Dental records confirmed the identification within 48 hours. Felicity Sinclair had been on the Sinclair tract for 4,417 days.
I took my kids there. I took them every year. My dad and me and the 3 of them, and we'd walk around and they'd find deer tracks, and my kids played on that ground. They didn't know. I didn't know.
Emmett Gordy was sentenced in February of 2014, 7 to 14 years. He would be eligible for parole before his 79th birthday. Trace Sinclair closed his father's equipment repair shop the following spring. The sign came down in April. At sentencing, Temperance Markey read a statement.
My sister's children grew up without her. They grew up being told she left them. They walked on her grave, and they didn't know. For 12 years, the people whose job it was to find her accepted a story from the man who killed her and went home. 7 to 14 years. That's what her life was worth. That's what 12 years of her children not having a mother was worth.
After everything, after the forum and the detective and the confession and the meadow, it contracts to a single thing. A sister who kept a file for 12 years, a cardboard box in the back of a closet in a house in Caldwell County, 27 calls to a department that had stopped picking up. Felicity's boots were still on the Gordy porch when investigators visited the property in April of 2013. Nobody had moved them, toes facing the door. The drawing had been on the refrigerator since the fall of 2001. Felicity's youngest had made it the week before she disappeared. 5 figures, a mother in the middle, arms wide, 3 small figures around her, 2 more on either side. The child is 22 now. The Caldwell County Sheriff's Department issued a statement in 2014 saying the case had revealed deficiencies in the handling of missing person reports that had since been addressed. No officer was disciplined, no officer was named in the statement. The supplemental note from 2001, the one Deputy Hollis filed and no one acted on, remains in the public case file, 219 words. It contains every fact that should have opened an investigation 12 years earlier. The question this case will not answer is not about Emmett Gordy. The question is, how many cases like this one are still in the filing cabinet? Here is what became of them. Emmett Gordy was released on parole in 2020. He was 78 years old. The Sinclair tract was sold in 2015. The new owners did not know its history. They put in a small fishing pond in the clearing below the meadow. Temperance Markey still has the box. Nobody moved them.